Good day, everyone. We are about to witness a debate with the motion: was the Cavite Mutiny a grand conspiracy or a labor issue? Before anything else, I would like to introduce our debaters.
The 12th of June of every year since 1898 is a very important event for all the Filipinos. In this particular day, the entire Filipino nation as well as Filipino communities all over the world gathers to celebrate the Philippines Independence Day. 1898 came to be a very significant year for all of us. It is as equally important as 1896, the year when the Philippine Revolution broke out owing to the Filipinos' desire to be free from the abuses of the Spanish colonial regime. But we should be reminded that another year is as historic as the two, the 1872.
Two major events happened in 1872. First was the 1872 Cavite Mutiny, and the other was the martyrdom of the three martyr priests, the persons of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. However, not all of us knew that there were different accounts in reference to the said event. All Filipinos must know the different sides of the story, since this event led to another tragic yet meaningful part of our history: the execution of Gomburza, which in effect a major factor in the awakening of nationalism among the Filipinos.
There are two versions of the Cavite Mutiny, the Spanish and the Filipino version. The accounts of Dr. Trinidad H. Pardo de Tavera and the account of Jose Montero y Vidal. The perspectives of the two historians created a controversy. Is Cavite Mutiny a grand conspiracy, an attempt in overthrowing the Spanish government in the Philippines? Is Cavite Mutiny is not a grand conspiracy, but merely a labor issue?
For the mechanics of this debate, each speaker will deliver 3-minute speech. After each speech, I will immediately call upon the next debater to begin his or her address. Are there any questions regarding to the rules? If none, let's start with our first speaker from the proposition, Ms. Sheila Estrella.
Good day, distinguished speakers, members of the opposing side, and audience members. For everyone's knowledge, a conspiracy, according to Merriam-Webster's definition, is a hidden plan devised by two or more persons to accomplish anything harmful and unlawful. As a result, a covert strategy was devised with the goal of overthrowing the Spanish government by revolution. The Cavite Mutiny occurred in the year 1872. This was said to have occurred as a result of the labor dispute. The labor problem arose when Gobernador Izquierdo eliminated the benefits of being exempt from paying annual tribute and performing work. However, the affirmative argues it is not. As a result, by giving our reasons, I would want to defend our position that the Cavite Mutiny is a great conspiracy rather than a labor issue. According to Jose Montero Vidal's statement, the conspiracy had been going on quietly since the days of Governor La Torre. As a result, even before the elimination of advantages enjoyed by Cavite's laborers, when Governor Izquierdo succeeded before Governor La Torre, there were suspicious activities that information about a large rebellion would shatter Spanish power. It is also said that the labor issue was not the main reason of the revolution, because simply having a movement with the goal of overthrowing the Spaniards indicates that a conspiracy exists.
How can you assert or justify that they plotted the conspiracy even before the De La Torres time? The Cavite Mutiny was caused by the labor issue. Filipinos have the strong hopes for the improvement of their country's predicament. The loss of privilege for soldiers and laborers was the driving force for the revolution. The calm was disrupted when discontent with the administration grew across the colony, ending in the overthrow of Spanish control in the Philippine Islands. Uprising and murders devastated the whole Cavite garrison.
Thank you for your remarks. Let's call upon the first speaker for the opposition, Miss Laila de Guzman.
Good day to our great opponents and my fellow students. Our side is certain that the Cavite Mutiny was simply a labor dispute. As the first speaker, I'll define essential concept and lay out our primary points. The supporting explanation for our arguments will be explained by our second speaker. Our final speaker will conclude our discussion. Before I go into our argument, let me explain certain terminology that are used in this discussion. A conspiracy, according to Webster, is a hidden plot devised by two or more persons to do anything harmful or unlawful. According to the Oxford Dictionary, mutiny is an insurrection against the proper authority, particularly by soldiers and or sailors against their superiors officers. The Cavite Mutiny was a revolt in San Felipe Fort, Cavite, involving the natives and some laborers. In this assassination, the commanding commander and several Spanish officials in charge of the fort were killed. The concept of the mutiny as well as the event itself will be discussed in this discourse. Let me now set clear our case. The first point is that the elimination of the exemption from paying tribute, tax, and forced labor is the only credible reason for the mutiny. The mutiny in Cavite is just a labor problem, as it is only logical for them to go on strike after their privilege were removed. The second point is that Gumbursa were not the ones who started the insurrection. The third point we make is that it was the Philippine Revolution did not begin until after Gumbursa's death. That's all, sir.
The Spanish Revolution was intended to destroy the secular monarchy. The Gomburza were killed not because of a labor dispute, but because they were accused of being the masterminds of the Cavite Mutiny. It's a big conspiracy since the Gomburzas were found guilty by the fiscal, while they were the defendants. However, the prosecution focused on Governor Izquierdo's interpretation, claiming that the three priests were the cause of the mass rebellion due to the transmission of information. That is why Gomburza was blamed for the Cavite Mutiny. Therefore, if we analyze it, the labor issue is not a good justification about why the Cavite Mutiny happened or occurred.
Thank you for your remarks. Let's call upon the second speaker for the proposition, Ms. Lian Dorado.
According to Montero Vidal's statement, the conspiracy had been going on quietly since the days of Governor La Torre. As a result, even before the elimination of advantages enjoyed by Cavite's laborers, when Governor Izquierdo succeeded before Governor La Torre, there were suspicious activities that intelligence about a large rebellion would shatter Spanish power. It is also said that the labor issue was not the sole reason of the revolution, because simply having a movement with the goal of overthrowing the Spaniards indicates that a conspiracy exists. The Spanish Revolution was intended to destroy the secular monarchy. Here are a few reasons. The propaganda waged against Spaniards by an unrestricted press, books and pamphlets about democracy and conservatism. The apostles of new ideas in Spain deliver speeches and preach. The American publicist rage and the foolish governor's illegal policies, they began working toward their aim with the tremendous help of a particular portion in order to acquire their freedom. The main leaders were also accused of gathering in the homes of the Filipino Spaniard Joaquin Pardo de Tavera or the native priest Jacinto Zamora to organize the revolution, which was generally revised by the Coret of Bacoor, the movement's soul. The conspiracy involved the Manila garrison, which was primarily made up of local troops, as well as a large number of citizens. The plan was for the troops to assassinate their commanders, servants, and masters, and for the general's guard at Malacanang to kill the governor. This explains why the insurrection was well prepared. According to Dr. Trinidad de Travera, the colonial minister, he devised a plan to implement a dramatic reform in the colonial system of government in order to align with the values for which the revolution in Cavite was waged. The Filipinos had high hopes for an improvement in the country's circumstances because of the facts and promises.
Let's also not forget that the death of Combursa was a failure on the side of the Spanish government because it ended Filipino resentment and encouraged Filipino patriots to demand reforms and eventual independence.
Thank you for your remarks. Let's call upon the second speaker for the opposition, Ms. Kayla Kalantok.
Let me elaborate on our points. First, Rafael Izquierdo revoked the laborers' exemption from paying tribute tax and forced them to do personal labor on January 1, 1872. This abolishment enraged the employees, prompting them to do what they did. How much more to those who were part in the mutiny, who were refused their exemption from paying tribute tax and were obliged to offer forced labor even on days they weren't meant to. If we students respond irrationally when confronted with academic requirements. Second, according to Izquierdo, Combursa was the mastermind behind the insurrection. It was due to secularization, which is defined as the separation of the church from the state of government. The point here isn't to debate the laborers' uprising. The question we should be asking is whether the mutiny is a labor dispute or a large-scale plot. When you're furious, you can truly manage your emotions. Anger may lead to the most heinous acts. They did not do so in order to fix the situation. They did it because they were angry.
If Gomburza and Joaquin were simply suspected, how could it become a conspiracy? Because it was merely a supposition, there is no confirmation. Now that I think about it, in 1521, Spaniards arrived in Manila. The Cavite Mutiny took place in 1872. Many centuries have passed. Do you believe the Filipinos hold grudges towards the Spaniards and have suffered because of them? It also illustrates that the revolution was not solely driven by workers. That concludes my argument.
Thank you for your remarks. Let's call upon the third speaker for the proposition, Ms. Isabel Crisostomo.
I'd want to make a remark before I begin my speech. No warrior goes to fight unless he is prepared. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to everybody in attendance, our dear adversaries, my colleagues, and my beloved judges. We clarify here that the Cavite Mutiny occurred before Gomburza's death. In order to answer problems raised before and using the official report and even Osevidal's narrative, he illustrates not just good aspects of mutiny in Cavite but also what actually transpired. As a result, for this argument, I'd like to recap our points made by the previous speakers. The positive side claims that the Cavite mutiny is a major plot rather than a labor dispute. According to Jose Monteros Vidal's report, the Cavite Mutiny took place in 1872, after the rule of Governor Escudero. Information of a plot existed prior to his presidency, and he was unconcerned until he ordered the removal of laborers' privileges in Cavite, which I believe is too insignificant to justify a revolution. Why is there a mutiny in Cavite if you claim it was merely a labor issue?
Do you believe Izquierdo is biased? He's the Governor-General after all. And don't you suppose the Cavite Mutiny was only a pretext for the Gomburza's death? How can you claim that Gomburza were the masterminds of the rebellion, while Montero Vidal's version claims that they were just suspected?
Thank you for your remarks. Let's call upon the third speaker for the opposition, Ms. Camille Daisor.
The mutiny at Cavite is purely a labor problem for the following reasons. First, the soldiers' only possible cause was the elimination of the exemption from paying tribute tax and forced labor. Workmen at the arsenal at Cavite in the barracks of the artillery and engineer corps have been free from paying tribute tax and working on public projects on specific days each year from time immemorial. Rafael Izquierdo, the then General of the Philippines, removed these rights on January 1, 1872, and ordered that all workers pay tribute tax and labor for public purposes. This caused widespread discontent among the affected workers, and the men working in Cavite's arsenal went on strike. They were able to do so because of their volcanic anger about the issue, not because it had been previously planned for the reasons mentioned by Montero, which he felt led the engaged individuals to carry out the revolt to gain independence. Furthermore, according to both teams' definitions of conspiracy, a conspiracy involves a plan. However, no mention was made of a strategy or that it was devised by the laborers or employees. The Philippine National Commission stated that local clerics were active participants in the church's secularization push at the time, to allow Filipino priests to assume control of the country's churches rather than to persuade people to remove the Spanish government through the mutiny. Finally, how did the Cavite Mutiny become a plot to destabilize the Spanish government when in fact it was only after the execution of Gomburza that Filipino nationalism was reawakened, leading to the formation of secret organizations and movements to destabilize Spanish rule in the Philippines. So that concludes my case.
Do you believe that the workers were the only ones who participated in the revolt or revolution? Knowing that the other causes were enumerated by them, such as the Spanish Revolution, which overthrew the circular throne, filthy propaganda spread on unrestrained press, democratic, liberal, and books and pamphlets, reaching the Philippines, and most importantly, the presence of native clergy who, out of bitterness against the Spanish flyers, conspired and supported and rebels the enemy of Spain, which makes it conspiracy.
Thank you for your remarks. The speaker for the opposition, Ms. Mardy, will now deliver the last speech opposing the case.
A nice afternoon to our great opponents and my colleagues. Our team is certain that the 1872 Cavite Mutiny was caused by a labor dispute rather than a plot. The only motive for the mutiny in Cavite is the workers' dissatisfaction with the elimination of tax exemption and forced labor. It's not because they want to depose the Spaniards from power in the country, but rather because they want to be isolated from them. The Cavite Mutiny is not a conspiracy since heathen groups developed shortly after the killing of the three priests, including the Gomburza, which also reawakened Filipino nationalism. Furthermore, there is no specific description of the Indios revolt strategy. How come those who took part in the rebellion were quickly executed without additional inquiry if they planned something? Why would they not plot an escape if they have created a strategy? If it's a conspiracy, you wouldn't merely accuse someone of being the mastermind behind the occurrence.
Thank you for your remarks. The speaker for the opposition will now deliver the last speech affirming the case.
Cavite Mutiny, in my own opinion, is a grand conspiracy involving the Spanish interpretation or perspective. Even though I am aware that the elimination of the privileges enjoyed by the Cavite arsenal laborers of exemption from tribute was the cause of the insurgency. If we analyze or review it carefully, we must look at the largest views of contents and not just one argument that the Cavite Mutiny was solely due at a labor issue. This is a simple and weak argument that leads to a widespread Filipino uprising. It is a big conspiracy since the Gomborzas were found guilty by the fiscal while they were the defendants. However, the prosecution relied on Governor Izquierdo's interpretation, claiming that the three priests were the cause of the mass rebellion due to the transmission of information. That's why Gomborza was blamed for the Cavite Mutiny. Therefore, if we evaluate it, the labor issue is not a good justification for why the Cavite Mutiny happened or occurred.
Every history, as told and as heard, has at least two perspectives to consider. Each perspective or point of view has its own arguments, merits, or claims. Biases may be obvious, yet they are unavoidable since they are a result of the storyteller's limitations. The sacrifice of Gomburza occurred as a result of the Cavite Mutiny. The country has suddenly become aware of its national identity. The revolt had such an impact on the country's history that it reawakened the country's desire for independence. To summarize, I feel the Cavite Mutiny is still significant in today's culture because of its impact on our ideas, morality, and rights.
The argument is going to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, different accounts of the events may exist, but one thing is definite. The revolution cleared the stage for the historic year of 1898. If Cavite laborers had not been stripped of their rights to non-payment of tributes and forced labor, the 1872 Cavite Mutiny may have been averted. As a result of the removal of workers' privileges, the 1872 Cavite Mutiny sparked a conflict. Because this occurrence resulted in another terrible yet significant aspect of our history. All Filipinos should be aware of all sides of the event. The execution of Gomborza, which was a crucial part in the reawakening of Filipino nationalism. I feel their death was unreasonable since I also believe the Spanish version of the narrative is untrue. These incidents serve as a source of inspiration and caution for Filipinos who want to speak up against the government and other organizations that are mistreating our nation and its citizens. We must know when and how to express ourselves effectively and securely, as we may be unfairly accused as the three priests were during that time.